The stars don't care about history. They burn the same whether you're watching them from a palace or a prison, whether your civilization is 800 years old or 8,000, whether the ship you're standing on is the most powerful vessel in the known galaxy, or the second most powerful. The Vael had forgotten that distinction. They were about to remember it. Marcus Osei was eating when they crossed into the home system. Not a ceremonial meal, not a commander's dinner with white tablecloths and polished silverware. A protein ration, cold, eaten standing up at the narrow counter in his quarters, because he hadn't sat down in 19 hours, and his body had finally issued a non-negotiable demand. He ate without tasting it, his eyes moving across the star charts pinned to the wall above the counter, the same charts he had studied every single day since he was 7 years old, and his grandfather pressed a faded photograph into his hands, and said quietly that one day Marcus would see it for himself. The photograph was still in his chest pocket. It had been there for 31 years. His comm crackled. Admiral, it was his navigation officer, petty, young, efficient, perpetually underslept. Sir, you're going to want to be on the bridge. Marcus looked at the half-eaten ration in his hand, set it down on the counter. Talk to me, Petty. We've cleared the outer marker, sir. A pause, the kind that means the next sentence is too large for the speaker to deliver without preparation. We're in the Sol system. We're home. Marcus stood very still for a moment. Then he put the photograph in his chest pocket, straightened his uniform, and walked out. The bridge of the Uhuru was not a quiet place under normal circumstances. 200 crew stations, constant comm traffic, the low, constant vibration of engines that had been running for longer than most civilizations kept records. But when Marcus stepped through the doors, it was silent. Every single person on that bridge was looking at the view screen. He walked to his command position at the center of the room, stood behind his chair without sitting, and looked up. There it was, small at this distance, pale blue, wrapped in white cloud, turning with the patient indifference of something that had been doing exactly this for 4 billion years, and had no particular plans to stop. Unremarkable, if you didn't know what you were looking at. Just another planet, in just another system, orbiting just another average star. Marcus had seen photographs of it every day of his life. He knew its surface geography better than he knew his own face. He had studied its weather patterns, its ocean currents, its tectonic history, its atmospheric composition. He had never, not once in 31 years, been prepared for what it felt like to actually see it. He was aware that his hands were gripping the back of his chair. He was aware that the bridge was still completely silent. He was aware that Petty, at the navigation station to his left, was not even pretending to look at her instruments. He cleared his throat. All ships, all frequencies, he said. This is Admiral Osei. He paused, just for a second. We are in the Sol system. Earth is on the screen. We have come home. Another pause. Stand by for contact protocol. Osei out. He sat down in his chair. From somewhere in the back of the bridge, Marcus never found out who it was, someone started clapping. Then 2 people. Then the entire room, and through the open comm channels, the sound of it spreading ship to ship like fire through dry grass. 200 vessels full of people who had been born in the dark between stars, finally seeing the thing their whole lives had been pointed toward. Marcus let it go for 10 seconds. Then, quietly, all right, back to your stations. We're not home yet. His brother was waiting outside the bridge doors when Marcus emerged 40 minutes later for the pre-contact briefing. Davon Osei was 3 years younger than Marcus, and had spent those 3 years making up for the deficit in volume, what he lacked in seniority. He was leaning against the corridor wall, with his arms crossed, and an expression on his face that Marcus had been reading since they were children. Equal parts excitement, and the specific kind of barely contained energy that in a Vael would have been called aggression, and in Davon was just called Tuesday. Tell me we're doing this right, Davon said, falling into step beside him. We're doing it right. Peaceful contact protocol, full transparency, the whole thing. Yes. Even though they've been living on our planet for 800 years. Davon. I'm just noting the irony, Marcus. Note it quieter. Davon was quiet for approximately 4 seconds. I pulled the Vael satellite feeds from the inner system. They've built cities, Marcus. On Earth. Big ones. There's a structure on the coast of what used to be West Africa that's 3 times the size of anything those coordinates ever held. He paused. Grandfather's village coordinates. That's where it is. Marcus didn't say anything. I'm just saying, Davon said. I heard you. I just want to make sure that when we open that diplomatic channel and ask nicely, you have a full picture of what we're asking them to give back. Marcus stopped walking, turned to look at his brother. Davon met the look without flinching. He was one of approximately 4 people in the fleet who could do that. I have a full picture, Marcus said. I have always had a full picture. Now go run the secondary weapons diagnostic I asked for 6 hours ago, and stop doing my job for me. Davon opened his mouth. That was not an invitation to respond, Marcus said, and kept walking. Behind him, after a moment, he heard his brother's boots heading in the other direction, and then, very quietly, too quiet for anyone else to hear, Davon said, He built his house there, Marcus. Grandfather built his house right there. Marcus kept walking. His jaw was tight enough to ache. High Consul Draven of the Vael Collective had been awake for 36 hours when the human fleet crossed the outer marker, and he had known they were coming for 29 of those hours, and he had spent most of that time doing something that his advisors found deeply unsettling in a man of his position. He had been standing at the window of his office, looking out over the city that bore his family's name, that his grandfather had helped plan, that his father had helped build, that his own children had been born into. The towers that caught the morning light and turned it gold, the wide streets that followed the curve of the original coastline, the harbor full of ships that had never known any other home. 800 years of Vael life, layered into this soil like sediment, each generation pressing down into the one before it until you couldn't separate them anymore. His aide, a young officer named Thesson, had been standing 6 feet behind him for most of those 36 hours, waiting. Consul, Thesson said finally, they're broadcasting on all standard frequencies, a formal request for communication. I know. The diplomatic office is asking for your response. I know that too. Draven turned from the window. He was not a large man. The Vael rarely were by human standards, though the humans who made such comparisons were about to become significantly more relevant. But he had the particular stillness of someone who had made large decisions for a very long time and had learned to carry them without visible effort. Get me Vael-san, he said. Sir, Commander Vael-san is already on the diplomatic channel. He's been coordinating the initial response protocols. Then get him off the diplomatic channel and get him in this room. Draven moved to his desk and sat down. All frequencies. No response. Thesson went very still. Consul, they've identified themselves as the original human population, under the return provisions of the Galactic Charter. I know what the Charter says. Sir, if we ignore a formal contact request, I said close the channel. Draven's voice didn't rise. It never rose. That was what made it effective. And then come back in here and sit down, because you and I need to have a conversation about the difference between what the Charter says and what is actually going to happen in the next 12 hours. Thesson closed the channel. Then he came back in and sat down, and Draven told him what was actually going to happen. Commander Vael-san was 34 years old, which in Vael terms made him young for his rank, and in human terms made him about as old as the civilization he was currently trying to diplomatically navigate. He had been on the communication channel for 2 hours when it went dead, and his first thought, professionally, was equipment malfunction. And his second thought, personally, was that he had been a fool for the past 2 hours. He sat in the communication suite for a moment, staring at the dead screen. Then he pulled up the internal command network and looked at what was moving. Ships. Vael warships, repositioning. Not patrol patterns. He knew patrol patterns, the way he knew his own heartbeat. Had designed half of them himself. These were attack vectors. 40 vessels moving into positions that formed, when you looked at them together on the tactical overlay, something unmistakable. An ambush. Vael sat very still for a long moment. Then he opened his personal comm and tried to reach Dravan. The channel was blocked. He tried the diplomatic office. Blocked. He tried the fleet operations channel that every senior commander had standing access to under Galactic Charter Provision 12, the one that existed specifically for situations where a senior officer believed an illegal order was being carried out. It connected. For 3 seconds. Then it was blocked too. Vael looked at the tactical overlay again. At 40 ships moving into position around a fleet that had its shields at diplomatic settings, that had come in slow and broadcasting peace on every frequency, that had done everything right. On the bridge of the Uhuru, Marcus was reading the Vael response to their contact request, which was to say, he was reading the silence where a response should have been. And he was doing that thing he did when something was wrong, which Davin had described once as looking like a man doing very calm mathematics about a very large explosion. "They've closed the channel," his communications officer said. Reyes, 40 years in the fleet, unflappable. His voice was flat and careful in a way that meant he was choosing flatness deliberately. "All frequencies, sir. No response, no acknowledgement, nothing." "How long?" 14 minutes. "And the satellite feeds?" His tactical officer, a woman named Bryn, who had the best spatial awareness Marcus had ever seen in a human being, pulled up the overlay without being asked. "I've been watching this for the last 8 minutes, sir, and I want to be clear that I'm not making a recommendation. I am purely presenting data." "Bryn, 40 Vael warships, sir. Current vectors." She highlighted them on the screen. "They converge on our position in approximately 11 minutes. The bridge went quiet. Not the warm quiet of seeing Earth for the first time, a different kind of quiet, the kind that settles over a room when everyone in it has understood something simultaneously, and no one wants to be the first to say it out loud. Marcus looked at the overlay for a long time. "Raise shields," he said. "Full combat settings. All ships now, quietly, no broadcast. Tight beam only. And get me my brother." "Sir," Reyes said, already working, "if we raise shields, they'll know we've made them." "They already know we've made them," Marcus said. "They're just betting we won't move fast enough. Get me Davin." The screen split. Davin was already in the weapons bay, already suited, already looking at Marcus, with that expression that meant he had been watching the same feeds and had been waiting for exactly this conversation. "You see it?" Marcus said. "I see it. I need you at secondary fire control, not primary, secondary. You know why." Davin's jaw tightened. "Because primary is what we use when we're trying to win a fight. Secondary is what we use when we're trying to end one." "Correct." "Marcus, I know. They're going to hit us first. I know that too. And you want me to. I want you to do exactly what I tell you, exactly when I tell you, and nothing else." Marcus held his brother's eyes through the screen. "Can you do that?" A long pause. Davin's hands were very still, which for Davin meant he was working very hard at something. "Yes," he said. "Good. Say out." Marcus turned back to the main screen. Earth was still there, patient and blue and turning. He looked at the photograph in his chest pocket for a moment. Didn't take it out, just rested his hand on it briefly. The way you touch something for luck, or for courage, or just because you need to remember what you're doing all of this for. Then, he put both hands on the arms of his command chair, and waited. The attack came at the 9-minute mark, which meant the Vael commander had either gotten nervous or gotten impatient. And in Marcus's experience, Those two things were usually the same thing, wearing different labels. The first volley hit 3 ships simultaneously. Not random, targeted. The Vael had done their intelligence work, identified the Uhuru's primary escort vessels, the 2 ships whose positioning meant that destroying them first would create the largest gap in the fleet's defensive formation. It was a good opening move. Professional. It would have worked against most opponents. The Vael had been studying 800-year-old human military doctrine. The humans had spent 800 years writing new doctrine. The escorts took the hits. Both of them. And both of them kept moving. On the Vael tactical screens, this read as damage assessment. Wait, confirm, determine combat status, standard procedure. It bought exactly 4 seconds of hesitation. On the human fleet channels, it read as the signal. The fleet went silent. All broadcasts, all non-essential communications, everything, cut. 200 ships operating on a closed tactical network that the Vael had no access to, no frequency for, had not even known existed until this moment. And in that silence, with a coordination that the Vael fleet admiral would later describe in his official report as, frankly frightening, the human formation began to change. On the surface it looked like chaos. Ships breaking formation, moving in directions that made no tactical sense. Some pulling back, some pushing forward. One entire wing of the fleet appearing to scatter. The Vael commander, watching this, felt something he would not admit to for many years. Relief. They were breaking. They were panicking. The ambush had worked. Davin Osei was at secondary fire control when the second volley hit, and he watched it land on the tactical display with his hands on the controls and his teeth clamped together so hard his jaw ached. And he did not fire. He did not fire. He watched the damage reports come in. Section 7 of the Kilimanjaro, venting atmosphere. The Accra, main engines offline, drifting. 17 confirmed casualties across the fleet in the first 90 seconds. Names he would know. People he had eaten with, trained with, grown up with in the corridors of ships that had been their whole world. He did not fire. He watched the formation change around him, watched the apparent chaos that he knew because Marcus had shown him the plans at 0300 that morning over cold coffee and star charts, was not chaos at all, was the most deliberate thing the fleet had ever done. And he kept his hands on the controls, and he breathed and he waited. His comm clicked. One click. The signal. Davin fired. The Vael fleet commander's name was Admiral Khosreth, and he had 41 years of service and had never lost a battle he had planned. And he had planned this one very carefully indeed. He stopped feeling good about it approximately 6 seconds after the human fleet's apparent scatter resolved into something else entirely on his tactical display. "What is that?" he said. His tactical officer was already working, already pulling vectors, already doing the same mental geometry that Khosreth was doing, and arriving at the same answer. "Sir, their formation, the scatter pattern, it's a funnel. They've been guiding our ships into—" "Break off," Khosreth said sharply. "All ships, new vectors, break off." The human fleet fired. Not with the weapons the Vael databases had catalogued. Not with anything the Vael had a classification for. What hit Khosreth's fleet in that moment was the product of 800 years of warfare, against something that made the Vael Collective look like a border dispute. And it hit with the focused, surgical precision of people who had been doing this for a very long time and had learned to be economical about it. Ships went dark, not destroyed. The humans were not destroying ships. They were removing them from the equation, disabling with a specificity that would have been impressive if it had not been so deeply unsettling. Drive systems, weapons arrays, communication relays, each strike landing on exactly the right system to make a ship combat ineffective without turning it into debris. The message was not subtle. We could kill you. We are choosing not to. Think carefully about what that means. Khosreth watched 6 of his warships go dark in 40 seconds. Then he watched the human fleet, 200 vessels, moving with that silent coordination that had no right to be possible, begin its advance toward Earth. Vael had been trying to reach someone, anyone, in the Vael command structure for 11 minutes. Running through corridors with his access codes, burning through every block channel he could find. When he rounded a corner and nearly knocked over a junior technician who was running in the opposite direction. "Commander," the technician started. "Move," Vael said, and kept running. He reached the secondary communications hub, not the main bridge, not the diplomatic suite, not anywhere that Draven's people would have thought to block. And he threw himself into the chair, and pulled up the frequency bands, with hands that were not quite steady, and found in the wreckage of blocked channels and closed frequencies, one thing that was still open. The human fleet's contact frequency. They had kept it open. Through the ambush, through the battle, through all of it, they had left the door ajar. Vael stared at it for a moment. Then he opened a channel, and spoke before he could think too carefully about what he was doing. "Human fleet, this is Commander Vael of the Vael Collective. I am speaking without authorization. I want to be clear about that. This transmission is not sanctioned, it is not official, and it will probably end my career." He paused. "I was on the diplomatic channel when the Council closed it. I did not know about the attack order. I want you to know that." Another pause. "I don't know why I think that matters to you right now. I think I just need to say it." He exhaled. "I have the shield rotation frequencies for the orbital defense platforms. The ones between your fleet and Earth. If you give me 30 seconds, I can transmit them to you." He sat back, ran a hand over his face. "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know exactly why I'm doing this. I have lived on Earth my whole life. I was born there. My children were born there. I love that planet, and I am not going to pretend otherwise." His voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. "But what the Council did today was wrong. And I have spent my whole career believing that there is a right thing and a wrong thing, and that the uniform I wear means I choose the right thing." He looked at the open channel. "So, here I am, choosing." Silence. Then a voice came back, measured, deep, carrying the particular quality of someone who has been in enough situations to know which ones are genuine. "Commander Vael, this is Admiral Marcus Osei, United Earth Fleet." A pause. "Transmit the frequencies."
As the vast emptiness of space enveloped the orbital defense platforms, a tense silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the soft hum of machinery. 16 colossal structures, the Vael's only bastion against the encroaching threat, orbited Earth like sentinels, each armed with enough firepower to obliterate a fleet twice the size of the one advancing toward them. They had been forged with a singular purpose: to keep Earth's orbit secure from foreign invaders. They were, without question, impenetrable. Inside the command vessel Uhuru, the flickering screens illuminated the anxious faces of the crew. Marcus, his brow furrowed with concentration, intercepted a transmission from Vael just 40 seconds before the enemy fleet would enter effective range. He swiftly relayed the frequencies to Bryn, who was seated at her console, her fingers poised like a pianist, ready to unleash a symphony. Receiving the data, Bryn's eyes widened with a mix of disbelief and determination. "Sir, these are real, these will work," she exclaimed, her voice steady yet infused with urgency. She met Marcus's gaze, a spark igniting between them, as if she had just deciphered the answer to a puzzle that had consumed her entire career. "All 16 platforms. We can walk right through." Marcus's heart raced. "How long to program the countermeasures?" 90 seconds. "You have 60. Go." With a nod, Bryn dove into her work, a whirlwind of efficiency. On the main screen, the platforms began powering up, the charge readings climbing like a heartbeat quickening with anticipation. The weight of the moment pressed down on Marcus, an anxiety that felt almost tangible. These weapons had never been tested in battle, and he could feel the mathematical certainty of impending conflict thrumming in the air. 50 seconds, Bryn said, her voice steady, as she navigated through the complex coding with the grace of a dancer. As the tension mounted, Davin's voice crackled over the private channel, laced with concern. "Marcus, the platforms were almost at full charge." "I know," Marcus replied, determination hardening his tone. She'll make it, Marcus interjected, his belief unwavering. Marcus. Davin, she will make it. 30 seconds, Bryn announced. Her hands a blur, gliding over the controls with an ease that belied the stress of the moment. 20. 10. Done. Countermeasures programmed and transmitting to all fleet vessels. Sir, we have a window. It's going to last about 40 seconds before their system compensates. Relief washed over Marcus, but he knew they had to act fast. That's enough. All ships, full ahead, now. In an instant the human fleet surged forward, slicing through the darkness of space, as if they were light itself passing through glass. The 16 platforms, each capable of obliterating their fleet, unleashed their full arsenal, yet the rounds found only emptiness, detaching harmlessly from the human ships that had already slipped through, untouched. And then as they burst forth from the shadows of war, Earth unfolded before them, vibrant and alive. The view screen transformed, revealing the delicate curve of coastlines and the Terminator line demarcating day and night, a sight every crew member had envisioned in their dreams and studied in books inherited across generations. Marcus felt an unshakable urge propel him from his chair, a primal instinct that defied his usual restraint. He stood, gazing in awe at Earth for the first time. The bridge fell silent, a hush that resonated with the enormity of the moment, as if the universe held its breath alongside them. Sir, Reyes spoke softly, breaking the spell. High Consul Davin is requesting communication. Marcus remained transfixed by the sight below, the weight of history and hope tangled within him. After a lingering moment, he returned to reality, straightening his uniform with a newfound resolve. As the dim light of the command room flickered, illuminating the weary faces of the crew, Marcus leaned toward the screen, his heart pounding like the distant thunder of a storm. On the other side, Draven's visage appeared, etched with lines of wisdom and fatigue. It was not the face of defeat, it was a mask of resilience, a storm that had weathered many battles yet stood firm against the winds of despair. The room, filled with the scent of stale coffee and the hum of machinery, felt heavy with anticipation, an electric charge that seemed to wrap around them like an invisible shroud. Marcus's breath caught as he stared into the eyes of the High Consul. Draven's voice cut through the tension, calm yet commanding, a whisper of authority. Admiral Osi, he began, nodding slightly, recognition glinting in his gaze. You have demonstrated considerable military capability today. I want to acknowledge that plainly. High Consul, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the tempest brewing within. The distance between their worlds felt insurmountable, as Draven continued. You have breached our orbital defense. Your fleet is in Earth orbit. I understand the significance of that, and I am not going to insult you by pretending otherwise. The High Consul leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. But I want you to consider something before this goes further. Earth is not an empty planet. It has a population of 4 billion Vael citizens who were born there, who have built their lives there, whose history is as real and as deep as yours. Whatever claim your people have to this world, and I am not dismissing that claim, mine have one too. 800 years of one. The silence hung in the air, thick and palpable, as Marcus absorbed the weight of Draven's words. They reverberated within him, a haunting echo of responsibility and pride, and he felt a flicker of empathy for the High Consul's plight. The stakes were high, not just for them, but for countless souls whose existence depended on this moment. Draven paused, allowing the gravity of his statement to settle like dust in the air. I am prepared to negotiate, he said, his voice now tinged with a hint of hope, a flickering candle in a vast darkness. Formal talks, joint governance, a framework that acknowledges both histories, both peoples. I am prepared to come to the table in good faith. Another pause. But I need you to understand that I will not simply hand you a world that 4 billion people call home, regardless of what the original deed says. That is not cruelty. That is responsibility. I think you understand responsibility, Admiral. Marcus, a seasoned tactician, regarded Draven with newfound respect. He could see the weight of centuries on his shoulders, the burden of a civilization that had thrived in the shadow of the stars. He took a deep breath, the air thick with tension, and leaned forward in his chair, ready to lay bare the truth of their shared history. I do, he replied, his voice steady, veins of determination weaving through his words. I understand it very well. Here's what I also understand, High Consul. We left this system 800 years ago without telling anyone, because if we had told anyone what was coming, what we had found at the edge of the observable galaxy, the panic alone would have ended your civilization before the threat did. We went dark to protect you. We spent 800 years fighting something that would have reached this system in another 1200 years and would have ended every living thing on every planet in the Vael Collective and every other civilization in this galaxy. We lost 11,000 people doing it. We lost children who were born in the dark between stars and never saw sunrise on any planet. We lost everything except the mission. As he spoke, Marcus felt the weight of his own sacrifices, the echoes of lost lives reverberating in the back of his mind. His heart ached for the lost children, for the families torn apart by war and necessity. And when we came back, when we crossed into this system broadcasting peace on every frequency, shields at diplomatic settings, weapons cold, flying the most transparent approach in the history of interstellar contact, your response was an ambush. 40 warships, decloak, first volley before our shields were up. He let that truth linger, the air thick with unspoken emotions and the palpable tension between them. So let's be honest about the table we're coming to, High Consul. Let's not dress it up. In that moment, amidst the flickering screens and the distant echoes of a war fought in silence, two leaders stood at the precipice of history, the fate of their peoples hanging in the balance. Both burdened by their legacies, they faced each other not as enemies, but as reluctant allies, each carrying the hopes and fears of billions, ready to forge a new path through the darkness together. In the dimly lit chamber of the Galactic Council, shadows danced upon the walls, flickering like the hopes of those who dared to dream of peace. Dravan, the High Consul, sat rigid at the polished obsidian table, his face a mask of stoicism. The weight of galaxies rested upon his shoulders, yet his expression remained unchanged as he met the piercing gaze of Admiral Marcus. "What do you want, Admiral?" His voice was a blend of authority and weariness, echoing with the remnants of countless negotiations that had gone awry. Marcus inhaled deeply, the scent of ozone and distant starlight filling his lungs, sharpening his resolve. "I want what's ours," he replied, the words simple, yet heavy with the burden of history. "I want it back in a way that doesn't require me to remove 4 billion people from a planet by force. I don't want to do that, and I don't think you want me to have to either. I want formal recognition of human sovereignty over Earth and the Sol system." He paused, letting the weight of his declaration settle in the air, like a storm cloud ready to burst. "I am 31 years old, High Consul. We have time." Dravan's gaze flickered, something shifting behind his eyes. Not weakness, nor surrender, but a deeper complexity, the recognition of an argument that was both compelling and unsettling. "You said 11,000, he murmured, the words barely escaping his lips, but resonating with the pain of lost lives. "Yes," Marcus responded, his heart heavy with the truth. "Over 800 years," Dravan continued, a grim realization dawning. "Yes," Marcus replied again, his voice steady, though it quivered with the weight of shared history. Dravan pressed his lips together, a tightness forming as he grappled with the implications. "People who never," he faltered, the thought too painful to utter completely. "Children." Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating, as both leaders confronted the ghosts of their pasts. The air crackled with unspoken remorse and a shared understanding of the stakes. Finally, Dravan broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "You should have told us, Admiral." Marcus interjected gently. "You would have panicked. Your historians would have panicked. Your population would have panicked. The thing we fought feeds on that. It finds panic the way a fire finds oxygen. We knew that in the first 3 years of contact. So, we made a choice." He hesitated, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down upon him. "I won't say it was the right choice. I'll say it was the only one we could see at the time. Our grandparents made it. We've been living with it ever since." Another silence stretched between them, longer and more profound, echoing with the pain of decisions made in desperation. Dravan's eyes glimmered with unshed tears as he recalled the city of his birth, nestled against the waves of an ocean that had seen too much. "I was born in that city, Admiral, the one on the coast. I was born in a house that sits where a village once stood, a village that belonged to someone." His gaze met Marcus's, a flicker of empathy, igniting a fragile alliance. "I assume that someone's name was Osei." "My grandfather's family, yes," Marcus replied, a knot tightening in his stomach. Draven closed his eyes for a fleeting moment. When they opened, a subtle transformation had occurred, an acknowledgement of shared history, a quiet resolve to rise above division. I would like to resume the diplomatic channel, formally, with the full galactic charter provisions in place. And I would like to request, if you are willing, that Commander Vael be part of that process, on the Vael side. Marcus studied Draven, the tension in the room palpable. What happened to Vael? He is currently under arrest for unauthorized transmission of classified defense information, Draven said, his jaw tightening. I am the only person who can change that, and I intend to. Nodding slowly, Marcus felt the weight of the impending negotiations. Resume the channel, High Consul. We'll talk. We will talk, Draven affirmed, his face resolute, but before he could terminate the transmission, he paused. A question loomed larger than the galaxies themselves. Admiral, what was it? What you went to fight? What was it? Marcus met his gaze, the memories flooding back with a vengeance. Something that had no name for itself, he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of it all. Something that had been moving through the galaxy for longer than either of our civilizations has existed, leaving nothing behind it. No ruins, no signals, nothing. He let the words linger, heavy with meaning. You know what we called it, eventually, after the first 100 years of contact? Draven's curiosity piqued, he asked. What? The silence, Marcus replied, letting the weight of the revelation settle like an anchor. Because everywhere it had been, was quiet. As the channel closed, silence fell upon the bridge of the Uhuru, as if the cosmos held its breath. Then, Bryn's voice shattered the stillness, quiet, yet brimming with awe. Sir, Earth is hailing us. From the surface? Marcus asked, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. From the surface, multiple locations, they're broadcasting on the old human contact frequencies, she confirmed. Her eyes sparkled with wonder, conveying the magnitude of what they had just discovered. Sir, they've been maintaining those frequencies, the Vael on the surface. They've been keeping the old human frequencies active. They've been waiting for someone to answer. Marcus sat with the revelation, the weight of possibility settling around him like a warm cloak. Put it through, he commanded, his voice steady, ready to face the echoes of history and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The first shuttle broke through the atmosphere, its metallic hulls shimmering against the backdrop of a star-speckled void. 40 minutes later, Marcus remained aboard the command ship, a weight pressing on his chest, even as the roar of engines faded into the distance. He was not on it. Command protocol, fleet security, these were reasons he understood, yet dismissed with a weary heart. The mission was far from over, and he bore the burden of responsibility for 200 ships and several thousand lives. Personal reasons, no matter how compelling, could not justify abandoning them. Draven was on it. Marcus had not given the order. Draven had arrived at the shuttle bay clad in his off-duty clothes, the soft fabric of a simple shirt and trousers, a stark contrast to the crisp uniform that bore the insignia of his rank. He wore a look that Marcus recognized all too well, one that echoed their childhood when they lost their grandfather. On that day, Draven had stood composed, jaw clenched and eyes ablaze, holding back tears until they were alone. In that moment, Marcus felt a pang of nostalgia tug at him. He had looked at Draven, the weight of their shared history heavy in the air. First shuttle, don't make a scene, he had said, the authority in his voice tempered by an edge of concern. Draven nodded sharply, a gesture filled with unspoken trust and resolve, and stepped into the bay. As the clock struck 0600 local time, beneath the expansive African sky, the shuttle plummeted through layers of atmosphere. It descended toward a horizon that was slowly awakening, a canvas of deep blues and purples, shifting into a soft gold. Inside, Draven perched himself by the porthole, his heart racing. In his jacket pocket, he clutched a bundle of letters, 43 in total, written in ink on aged paper, relics of a bygone era. His grandfather's words penned long ago spoke of a world he had never known, but felt intimately connected to. The last letter, addressed to Draven himself, whispered promises of a future he was meant to inhabit. You will see it for me. You will put your feet on the ground and feel the soil. It was worth it. All of it. Every year. Every mile. Everything we left behind. It was worth it. Look at the sunrise for me, boy. First thing. The shuttle broke through the clouds, revealing the vibrant earth below. It was not a distant photograph or a digital image on a screen, but the real surface of the planet. an intricate patchwork of greens, browns, and golds. Rivers glinted like silver ribbons beneath the awakening sun, and in the distance, the outline of a city loomed. Vael architecture, striking and unfamiliar, yet somehow rooted deep in the earth's bones. The land itself, unchanged for centuries, was alive beneath the encroaching urbanity, indifferent to the passage of time that humans had orchestrated. Davin pressed his palm flat against the cool glass, feeling a connection spark through the barrier. As the shuttle touched down, a rush of exhilaration coursed through him. The ramp lowered, revealing the morning air of a continent that had been forsaken by his family for 8 centuries. The scent enveloped him first, an aroma rich with the essence of African coastal mornings, a blend of heat, salt, and thriving flora. It was a fragrance that existed nowhere else, beyond the realms of databases and archives, unreplicable in the cold vacuum of space. He paused at the top of the ramp, taking it all in. Then, with a deep breath, he stepped down. His boots kissed the ground, and he stood, bathed in the early gold light of an Earth sunrise. The moment resonated deeply within him, a silent tribute to his grandfather's request. He did not make a scene. Instead, he stood with his eyes wide open, absorbing the beauty around him. This was home, a place that had been waiting for him, a reality he had only ever imagined. In that heartbeat of existence, he became a person who had finally come home.